Welcome to the Rain or Shine PRF Podcast, where we talk about all things PRF. My name is Ross Bronson. I'm the Ag Risk Consultant at Red Summit Advisors, and at Red Summit Advisors, we are specialists in rangeland insurance and livestock insurance like PRF, LRP, things like that. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about PRF and how it fits into your long game strategy. I have McKay Erickson here with me, and he'll introduce himself in a minute. What we really want to talk about is how PRF fits into your risk management strategy long term. Like I said, as ranchers, we've kind of historically had a disadvantage in this area. The corporate world has had risk management tools for a long time. Farmers have had crop insurance for a very long time. We have had some management tools and some things like that, but we haven't had outside tools like insurance products as much as we're starting to see now and have had over the last 6 to 10 years. So it's in some ways it's a new discussion in risk management or in the ranching industry about risk management. So McKay, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of dive into what we're talking about today.
Okay, yeah. Like Ross said, my name is McKay Erickson, and I'm an account manager here at Red Summit, and so I feel fortunate to be able to help a number of ranchers with their accounts and their policies, and just I'm excited to be able to help talk about this kind of long game strategy.
Yeah, it's even been interesting just in within the company how we've realized that PRF really has become. It's important to start this conversation about this long term, because it's easy to sign up for 1 year, maybe own a premium and bail on everything, and that's not really how this works.
Right.
So, McKay, why don't you go ahead and talk us through? I know you brought some examples, and can talk us through some different scenarios of operators who owed premium at some point along the way, and how it all played out kind of in the net long run.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a great timing of this conversation as well, as we've been having a lot of phone calls with customers about, the wet year that we are having currently and how, they're forecasting, they're hearing different things about maybe it's going to be the same next year and how they may want to get out of it. And I think that we really need to think about that this year, that, this is a long-term program, and in order to really make it work, it's best to kind of just really look at it in that way. And the first example that has really always come to my mind is a rancher that we have here in Utah, and they first got into the program in 2019, and that first year, they probably were wondering, what are we doing, as they ended up owing about half of the premium, and we were able to work them through it, and the next year, 2020, ended up being a very dry year, and so they ended up doing very well. And had they got out in that year in 2019, they would have missed, and every year since then they have made that back and then some, to show that red year in 2019 and then those subsequent green years, that if you just were short-sighted and just saw that one red year and said, I can't do this anymore, I've got to get out. And I understand that is scary, but if you really can look at it in the long term, it's amazing how good this program can be.
I think it's interesting too to remember that, so PRF is based off of your 70-year average, and so even though we might have a wet year next year, or it doesn't necessarily mean that all of your intervals are going to owe or something like that. So it really does work out long term. So do you have any other examples you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have another one from a ranch in Wyoming that very similar, and this kind of illustrating a different point, that it's not so much like you have one bad year and then you just stay in it and you'll have a bunch of green years. It truly kind of makes you look at the long-term net average of your policy. Whereas same thing in 2019, they ended up paying, about a third of their premium. Then the next year it paid off, but it didn't hit a home run, but it paid off enough. The next year was red again, owing maybe a quarter of their premium. And then the next year was green again. And so if you look at that, you're like, that's like red, then green, then red, then green. But if you look at the net average, or the net total, I guess, over those 4 years, it's, you know, more than sufficient to cover all the losses and then some. And so, yes, it kind of looks daunting when you look at those in those years, but if you truly look at it in the long, big picture, then it's a very good program that can pay off.
I just had an interesting thought how, using the futures to hedge the cattle market has been around for ages and ages and ages.
Forever.
And it really does the same thing. It sometimes you kind of hold that margin for the good or for the bad, and then sometimes something happens and your futures take off or your cattle market takes off, and really for some operators, that's kind of the best way to look at it. Is it's almost a stable for a while, and then every once in a while you might get a home run.
Yeah.
And to be fair, a lot of producers come ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these examples, I kind of tried to give a little more of kind of a moderate approach, but yeah, for sure, I think a lot of people are definitely doing very well with the program. Yeah.
And I have some folks did well last year, Owen this year, but so I guess my next question then is, why, again, we're talking long-term risk management strategy. So what are people doing with these premiums? Are they just buying new trucks, or, what have you heard? What are some good examples of folks who realized that this can now help sustain their operation in the long run and can help get them better prepared for the next severe dry spell?
Yeah, I think some of the things that I've heard is they're able to, one of my favorites is that, normally they'd have to sell off part of their cow herd because of the drought and then just to afford hay to feed to the rest of their cows. And whether this helps them retain those cows so they don't have to sell them, or it helps them purchase the hay to keep those cows. I know that a lot of people are they're improving their pasture so that it can be more drought tolerant. They are putting in water improvements, pipelines, whatever it may be. But I think today still one of my favorites, and it's been a couple of our customers, that they've been able to have some funds to bring back their children to have a little bit of a salary to pay them to come and work on the ranch. And we talk about that here, that we're keeping families on the land, and we truly are. I mean, PRF is, and it's an amazing program that it can make, these ranches more sustainable in these dry drought conditions.
Yeah. I remember when I first got exposed to it, I just realized what a game changer it was in the industry. It just empowers ranchers in so many different ways.
Yeah,
so,
it's incredible.
Yeah, and I've seen some folks do some similar stuff, and it just is so amazing how, if you kind of look at it as part of your long-term strategy, and then make appropriate decisions as you get those indemnities coming in on dry years,
right,
that it can really help the next generation of ranchers move forward in a really sustainable way. So
absolutely,
yeah. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Rain or Shine PRF podcast. And if you want to know kind of how PRF could work on your operation, give us a call here at Red Summit Advisors. We'll put you in touch with an agent, and they can give you these quote sheets that McKay's been talking about that can show you estimates of how your operation, a PRF on your rangeland, would have performed over 15, 20 years. And it helps give some peace of mind when making that decision for your operation. So give us a call.